Hello, so today we're going to be going over patch 15.2b, the best comps for the current patch. These are not necessarily going to be the highest placing, craziest comps. Some of them will be, some of them won't be, but a lot of it's just going to be focused on some level 8 comps as well as some reroll comps to give you some nice consistent placements and have a really good time on the current patch and kind of talk about how things are shaping out with the patch. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We reached our 10,000 sub goal giveaway, so I'm actually going to later in the video give you some information on how to enter. Today's the last day to enter, so make sure to do that if you want to do so. But normally I'm doing daily TFT guides. Here it's going to be a best comps patch day because if you saw the post, a lot of people wanted me to do one every single week, so I'm going to try and make it a weekly series where I either do it on patch day or I do it on the Monday of the next B patch or whatever. Order artifacts were supposed to come out today, coming out tomorrow. Sorry about that. Decided to do best comps a little bit easier for me, and I had to edit some of the order artifact stuff, so we'll do it tomorrow. And then obviously, VOD channel if you want to see VODs. Anyways, first thing we should talk about, what was the B patch? So there's a B patch and there's technically also a C patch, which I think was mostly bug fixes because there's not many notes on it, but a C patch launched today and I don't think there's any balance changes, just bug changes. Basically what they did is they just gutted Gangplank. They did a couple bug fixes as well if you were worried about 9 lives and Hard Bargain or some of these other ones. This Gangplank nerfs basically makes them completely dead in the water. So if you were following from my other best comps patch, I was kind of talking like Gangplank's still a viable reroll line. I would recommend not playing it. I think it's really bad. This patch, funny enough, actually dropped while I was playing on like the day, and I didn't realize it dropped, and I was losing a bunch of games and a bunch of LP playing Gangplank. I was like, what happened? And then after stream, I looked up the patch. I'm like, oh, they nerfed him without me knowing. My bad. So that's just something to keep in mind. But anyways, let's talk about the best comps now. Sorry for a long intro. Hopefully, I'll put a little breaker point so you can skip it if you want. But anyways, Edgelords. This one is probably the strongest, in my opinion, and most reliable and consistent comp that is on the current patch. This comp is obnoxious, it is strong, and it has really good matchups, which we're actually going to talk about a little bit. This patch, to me at least, is very frustrating to play, and I'm starting to get the hang of it. But on a first glance, if you're struggling with this patch, I don't blame you, because there's a lot of really matchup dependent situations going on based on like melee carries and how they kind of target and all of that stuff. This one is probably the one that has the best spread of matchups. It's probably the most broken of all the comps, and definitely what I would consider to be one of the most consistent and strong ones, so long as you're able to play it and not super contested while doing so. Basically what you're striving to do is make it to 6 Edgelord for Luchador. This is a comp that does fit in on level 9, but don't worry, you're not playing it as on level 9. Like, you don't have to rush to level 9. It's not a fast 9 comp. This is a level 8 or fast 8 comp where you're just going to play around Volibear as your main carry. Hopefully, when you do your roll down on level 8, you're hoping to see either one of Yone or Braum. If you don't see either of them, that's okay. I'll talk about some variations in a second. But typically, you're looking for one of these 2 units, and that allows you to either play 6 Edgelord or 4 Luchador, which are huge spikes for the Volibear. If you don't hit either of the 4 costs, that's fine. Basically, what you play in place of that is the set, which often can make it your final board as well. And then you kind of get Soul Fighter and Juggernaut in, and you play a board that looks a little bit like this. You have one open spot, so a lot of times what you'll do is you'll just play an extra Bastion unit in place of another Edgelord. So you'll drop like Xayah, you'll play, or even this guy, and you'll just fit in whatever you can in order to make it work. So it's a pretty flexible comp. You actually have a lot of wiggle room going on with it. I'm just going to put the max cap variation where I have the Braum and I have the Yone, just to make it very clear. But this is basically what the comp kind of looks like at full power. When you're playing this comp, Volibear has a lot of built-in stuff going for him that's really nice. If you read him, his passive, he does a bunch of extra damage, and then he has this extra effect, which we'll talk about in a second, called when changing targets, immediately slam for 120% of damage. This is going to be really important to optimize this comp and really to get the most out of it, and we're going to talk about it in a second. But first, I also want to talk about the active. With the active, he basically gains a bunch of attack speed and some Omnivamp, and he gets immune to crowd control. So you get CC immunity, which means you don't have to build like anti-stun on him. So he has a lot going for him with his active as well as his passive. What you really want to do is reset. That's the name of the game with Volibear. You don't really care too much about like the auto attacking. Yes, every 4th attack deals a bunch of damage, but a lot of times what you care about a lot more is this slam doing 120% damage. It's actually a little bit more skewed in that favor. So you're not really going for a Volibear like, you know, like Guinsoo like rapid fire attacking type of build. Usually you're just going for like a one shot and or like giga hit kind of build with this passive, stacking with that. But basically for that, IE is the name of the game. You make your ult crit, give yourself a bunch of crit chance and some AD, and then you have strikers, which also helps you out. And then a lot of times, just to make sure that he doesn't die instantly, some survivability is nice. Edge of Night, you could go for a third damage item here, but I usually recommend Edge of Night with this build just to make sure that you're in an okay spot. Of course, being an edgelord, he gets lots of AD from the edgelord trait, especially if you make it to the high cap version of edgelord. And then also you get a lot of AD from luchador, so you get also some survivability in the luchador trait. So these all combined together makes this unit into an absolute demon. Of course, there are other Volibear builds you can go for. If you want to make him more drain tanky, kind of like a melee style, like hard to kill unit, you could go for like the Sterix BT. I think it's definitely worse than just going full crit. If I'm playing Volibear and I know that I'm playing Volibear, I'm usually angling towards more of a crit build than more of like a melee attack fighter, like drain tank kind of build. I think these ones are definitely a lot worse. And then also there are a lot of there are some niche situations where a Kraken's could also work on Volibear. I think these are very niche. A lot of times it's Kraken paired with the IE, and you're going for like a very one-shot style of build. Usually with like stretchy arms in some cases, like stretchy arms Volibear with like but when you have stretchy arms, he doesn't jump in. He does the slam from a distance. So this is more like, you know, giga attack speed, stretchy arms, like crazy kind of like one-shot potential. But like I said, the average one that you're usually going to go for is this one. That's going to be the most beneficial. Now, his passive, when changing targets, immediately slam for 120 damage. This is the part where it's going to be a little bit of tutorial if you haven't seen this comp be played before. But basically, you'll often see something that looks roughly like this. Also, Samira can hold your extra items. She can also hold your utility items. And you can also put basically the exact same Volibear items on Samira, and she can be a great secondary carry. But a lot of times you'll see a Volibear positioning something along the lines of this, right? It looks like this, right? And you're kind of like, I don't understand why they're doing this. This kind of looks weird, and it makes me uncomfortable. But what this does, I'll try and map it out to you. But basically, when you put the Volibear 2 hexes away, he's going to be targeting the unit that's up here, right? So when he first targets this unit, he's going to try and walk up to get to this hole to target this unit. If you put another unit like pretty much in front of him, either here or here, what happens is when the round starts, this unit is also targeting a unit up here, whether it be this one or that one. So then this unit's going to walk up. Now Volibear walks up as well, and Volibear's like, uh-oh, Spaghetti-O, there's nobody here. What do? I can't reach my target because I'm a melee unit and I don't have more than one range of attack. So what does Volibear do? He starts walking his ass over to where the open slot is on the side. Now, in doing so, originally he's targeting this unit, but when he starts to walk, as soon as he walks like 1 or 2 hexes away, now he switches targeting. When he switches targeting, his passive activates, and uh-oh, Spaghetti-O, the Volibear just jumps, and he just fucking does a shit ton of damage. That's why these crit builds are really good, because basically, like, off round start, you can sometimes immediately kill a unit if you're positioning well. And if you're not positioning well, you can still do like half health on a unit instantly. You want to have that burst damage to try and get the first kill, because as soon as you start resetting, then the Volibear starts jumping around everywhere. The Volibear starts going nuts, and he starts killing everything. If you want to see a crazy situation, you can get even Radiant items on this Volibear, which are insane. Like, Radiant items work so well, because if you can get this Volibear to one-shot potential, he just jumps and kills everything, because he just keeps resetting and keeps doing the intense slams. So now, I showed you the positioning. If you want to know the nuance of this positioning, the main thing that you want to make note of here is that the Volibear will always walk towards where the open hex is. So the unit that he's going to target, if I go full board, for example, let's say there's like, you know, I'll just put 2 units here and here, right? This Volibear is going to target this unit on the edge, right? It's going to target a unit on the right-hand side, because when he walks up, he's going to go here, then he's going to reset, and then he's going to jump like that and attack this unit. He's not going to jump over these units and attack on this side. Alternatively, if you want to get the Volibear to attack the other side, what you have to do is you have to do the same kind of positioning, but you have to leave a hole on the opposite side. Now, obviously, you want to make it so that the Volibear has to walk a large distance so he retargets, right? You don't want to do something like this. This won't work, right? like if you do something like this, because the Volibear won't really often doesn't jump, because he doesn't have to retarget sometimes. Sometimes he can still reach the unit that he's targeting, so it makes it really awkward. Or by the time he gets here, he just kind of like, he's already there, right? What you want to do is you always want to make it so there's like probably like 2 units in between. So you're either positioning like this, and then he's walking this way, or you're positioning like this or something, and then he's walking that way. You know what I mean? Because you want to trap him like that, then he walks, and then he jumps. So that's how you can jump from either side. You want to target a unit that is low health or cheap, like not a giga tank, because you want your Volibear to get those resets so he keeps proccing his passive. And then you can worry about like chipping away at the main tank once the rest of your board does enough damage to compensate for that. Obviously, Braum positioning, you always want to put in front of the main tank as well, because he can stun and basically prevent them from living. Anyways, that's the crash course on the Volibear line. For the most part, obviously, like I said, there are lots of other builds with it. If we're looking at a bonus fruit, I like the slam, the serious slam one. First attack on each enemy deals this much damage and stuns. I think this, with this passive, with the stun, is absolutely obnoxious. I really like this, but also there's lots of builds with Volibear. Like I said, there's stretchy arms versions. Even if you need to ignore armor, whatever you can do to kind of fit your board together nicely. A lot of his bonus fruits are actually pretty nice. Like there's not one that's like a significantly like, oh god, this is so awful. Like a lot of them are playable, but I usually go for this one if I have the choice. But anyways, that's the Volibear line. Next, let's talk about probably the most tilting comp right now. If you have not seen it being played, I envy you, because this comp makes me want to quit the game. I hate it so much, but it's fine, because like a lot of it is because I'm not very good at the game right now. I'm getting better at dealing with it. But Akali. So let's talk about this comp. This comp has a lot of nuance as well, so we're gonna have to rant for a little bit. But basically, what you're playing is 6 Protector Akali. Right, 6 Protector, you get the synergy because of the Kennen for Supreme Cell, and you're playing Akali main carry. You could also play Cassante, like all-out Cassante, which then you would build like, you know, crit Cassante style items, but you usually don't mix the two of these, right? In this case, Cassante is usually going to be your main tank, so you're building tank items on Cassante. That's typically going to work out better. Now, Akali's items look like the most fucked up shit you'll probably ever see today, if you haven't seen this already. Like, you're looking at Akali and you're thinking, isn't she like Volibear? Isn't she a melee unit? Why the fuck is there a Shojin there? Why is there a Guinsoo there? Why is there an Archangels there? What's going on? Okay, well, let me explain, right? So, there's a couple things going on with this comp. Number one, basically what you're doing is you're stalling out. You're playing 6 Protector because it's really reliable and has good synergy with the rest of your kit to basically stall out infinitely. What you want for this Akali to do is to slowly ramp up to a point where then she just one-shots everybody. What happens with Akali is that she jumps to the furthest unmarked target within 4 hexes, and then she does magic damage to all of them. When she marks a target, she will continue to do magic damage on subsequent casts. So what you really want to do is get this Akali on as many units as possible, scale up the Archangels, and do a bunch of damage. Now, what you'll notice with Akali is that she also has something good going for her, which is a very low mana threshold. As you can see, it says that she only needs 30 mana to cast, right? 0 out of 30. So she can actually cast very frequently and very easily and get a bunch of marks on a lot of units. That's what this build is trying to do. Basically, what you're going for is Archangel scaling to the point where she's going to one-shot everybody. She's jumping around constantly, so she's really hard to kill. She's also an assassin, so by you having an insanely large front line, it's very rare that she's actually going to get targeted. A lot of times, she's going to bypass the targeting, and the front line, especially if they move around a lot, if you have something like Unstoppable on Cassante, where he jumps into the back line, she's going to be hard to target. So now, you have this Akali jumping around everywhere. You can't kill her because you can't target her very easily, and she keeps aggroing because she's jumping away and disappearing and whatever, right? So she's hard to kill. You're stalling out with your front line. Your front line's just buying time for you. Archangel's is scaling. While Akali casts, she takes a lot of time to cast, right? Because she has to jump between all the units. So then you have Guinsoo. Guinsoo makes it so that she's gaining attack speed. Now, she's not doing a lot of damage by doing auto attacks, right? She's not like a Kog'Maw where she has to auto attack a lot, but it's a form of mana generation. She generates mana from attacking. That's how most units in TFT generate mana. So by giving her a Guinsoo that scales as the fight's going on, you now have double scaling. So you're making it so it's easier for her to get her next ult off, which works really well because she has a very low mana threshold. last item is usually Spear of Shojin. So Spear of Shojin makes it so that every attack that you do grants 5 bonus mana. So now she just gets infinite mana. She has to do like 2 auto attacks and she instantly ults again. So she ults, attacks twice, ults, attacks twice, ults, attacks twice, and Guinsoo is constantly ramping, as well as Archangel. So even though she has a really long cast timing, like the Guinsoo and the Archangel will continue to ramp up as she's jumping around and hitting everybody. So it's absolutely obnoxious and it's absolutely annoying as shit because you're basically playing a stall comp where you're stalling, but your unit has backline access because the Akali can access the backline, right? She jumps to the furthest enemy within 4 hexes. So if you go to a full board, right, if you put your Akali here or here, I'm gonna move these units away for a second just to show you like where I want to position the Akali, right? You have main tank, you put the Akali on this side or you put the Akali on this side, right? If an enemy has a main backline damage dealer, let's say they have like an Ashe, for example, right? If you put the Akali here, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's enough for you to instantly target the Ashe and hit her. What if it's on this side? You just put her in this hex. So usually your Akali is going to be in one of these 2 hexes. Now obviously they can move their carry. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and we'll talk about some counterplay to this comp as well. But that's basically the crux of how it kind of functions and how it kind of plays. Now, there is one problem with this, is that the Akali doesn't have built-in Omnivamp. So if she can get bursted down and she can get killed really easily. That's where the bonus fruit comes into play. This is why this comp, I think, kind of sucks, because basically there's a huge difference between you hitting Crimson Veil and not hitting Crimson Veil. Crimson Veil is basically the best thing you can hit. You get 20% Omnivamp, and then your overhealing Omnivamp converts into shield. So this is what you really want to hit on the Akali. If you don't hit this on the Akali, then your build's going to kind of fall apart a little bit, and it's going to feel really awful, and it can feel a little bit low roll, but usually it's because you need to also hit this. Now, if you don't have Crimson Pact, then you can sometimes alternate. It makes it less, like, it makes the comp be less of a dominant comp, and it makes it more of like a fourthable comp. Like, it makes it a little bit weaker, but you can get rid of the Shojin. These two are usually essential. If you're building towards Akali, you usually want the Guinsoo and the Archangels. So these two usually don't get dropped. You could make a Hodge. It has good synergy with her kit because she's an Executioner as well. You play Rise to activate Executioner, but it's not like usually you want to hit Crimson Veil and you don't want to make the Hodge because this is just going to make her cast significant. It's going to be a lot more clunky. You really want to get those casts off to get like all the damage on everybody and all the marks on everybody. So it's definitely going to make this comp feel a lot worse, but it is still okay. There is still some potential playability. Some people also say you can make Nashers on her. I think it's bad. It looks bad in the numbers. Maybe the numbers will fix themselves in a couple days, but I really think you need the Guinsoo and the Archangels as a priority if you're angling towards this comp. The other thing that's really important with this comp to note also is Protectors, right? Protectors shield themselves and their closest ally for their maximum health. So a lot of times it's Akali, when she's jumping around and hitting everybody, she actually can grab some of the Protector's shields as well, because the shields don't just shield other Protector's units, they shield themselves and an ally. So with a lot of these units, the Akali gets a lot of survivability from those shields as well. So that's just something to take into account. Now, how do you play against this comp? How do you counter it? Well, when you're playing against the comp, let me just open a new team builder. There's a couple things you can do. So I'm just going to tell you some of the counterplay ideas, but a lot of it is just reactionary. And the problem is you have to position against Akali, but then we already talked about it. There's also the goddamn Volibear that you have to position around. So between Volibear, which is like a crazy unit that's jumping around killing all your units, you also have to position against the Akali, who's also jumping around killing all your units. So it makes this patch feel a little bit awkward, but a lot of times it's because you have to just have a comp that's good into those two comps, or else you're like kind of in an awkward spot. So let's say Akali is positioning. If you have enough frontline, so let's say we're playing like a Juggernaut Ashe kind of build, right? If you're playing like a Juggernaut kind of build like this, what you can do to counter the positioning is something along the lines of this, where you put your units off to the side, because Akali will usually just go to, this is like anti-Akali positioning. If Akali's positioning in this hex, she shouldn't jump towards your Ashe. Instead, she's going to jump towards the other frontline unit because they're both 4 hexes away. But with this specific positioning like this, you put like one unit here, all of these units here, she prioritizes on this side. So this is like a nice anti-Akali technology. However, if you put the Akali here, then this is an awkward positioning, because now for some reason she 50-50s if she goes to the back line or the front line, which, you know, doesn't make sense to me. but it's something to do with like the half distances between the hexes or some bullshit. I don't know. But if she goes here, now it's a 50-50, so you're still not safe, right? Obviously, if you're here and you have lots of backline units, if you have backline units to spare, let's say you have a Zyra and you have a little dude, you can put a little dude over here, right? And then the Akali will just jump onto, like, you don't even have to worry about your positioning. The Akali will jump onto the furthest unit, right? So you can always position your carry closer to the center to avoid getting hit by the Akali. But the problem with the Akali is, especially if you have the build that I'm showing you where she's chain casting and she's casting so frequently, is that even if she doesn't mark your target at the beginning, if you don't have enough DPS to chew through their front line, if you don't have enough DPS to chew through all the protectors, then the Akali will eventually make it onto your carry, right? The Akali will eventually scale up, and she'll run out of targets to hit. She right, because the thing is, she marks the furthest unmarked target. So if she's in range and all the other targets are marked because she casted everywhere, at one point you have to face the doomsday of an Archangel's Akali that has built-in crit from Executioner, just gonna hit your backline carry, and you just gotta hope that you have killed enough units at that point in order to actually be able to beat the comp. So those are the two main comps, right? Now, obviously, there's positioning, there's things around it. I think that there's less you can do against like, you know, the cracked out Volibear build. This one obviously has less things because obviously the Volibear is going to jump one way or another and he's going to start killing stuff. You definitely a lot more counterplay with the Akali build. It's just more annoying because, like, if you have to position around multiple people, the Akali can definitely rail you. But obviously if you're the Akali player, that's good. You're hoping that people are distracted and then you can just win a couple rounds for free. Of course, what this means in a lot of cases, there's a lot of comps that I think are still really strong. Those two are the main ones that I would say that you should be playing a lot of, because a lot of the other comps that have a frontline and a backline build are very risky, right? Like, we can take this one, I'll just decrease them in size, right? There's a lot of builds I talked about on the last video as well, and a big change that I would say is because of these two comps that deal with these melees, right? Volibear doesn't have to worry about the Akali because it's just a 1v1 duke out of whoever has better combat or whoever has better items. That they're just both melee carries. They can just attack each other. You don't have a backline that's going to get sniped, right? Akali, you don't have a backline that's going to get sniped. But a lot of these other boards, like if you play like a vertical board with a frontline and backline, like Ashe, Set, you have a bad matchup into the Volibear and the Akali because if they get to your backline, you're just dead, right? Similarly, Sorks. Sorks is really awkward because Sorks is all about burst damage and having enough frontline, but you could easily just get scammed out by the Akali because if you can't burst down the protectors or if you can't burst down the Volibear, if the Volibear gets too many resets because your frontline is too weak, excuse me, sorry, Jarvan should be here and Set should be here. I'm gonna make this very confusing for other people. Like, you have problems with some of these comps in some matchups. Now, obviously, a lot of stuff that I talked about, like Sorks and Ashe, these were in the previous videos and some of the other videos I made in the last week or so. There's still comps that are playable. There's still lots of room to play around multiple things. Just know, like, there's a lot of times where you could just lose for free because these comps have such good matchups into your comps because of how dominant they are and how easy they are to win, right? A really good example, like something that I would say, is if there's an Akali player in your lobby and a Volibear player in your lobby, like, you should, like, crew is fine, but like you just can't play it because with crew, like, you have the complete opposite problem where you have one frontline unit and all your backline units have to, like, survive. A lot of times, like, when you're playing crew reroll, everybody's dead and your Malphite's still alive because Akali just clears out the backline and Volibear just clears out the backline. So, like, there's comps like that where they're, like, a lot worse for wear right now. One of the comps that does this, all to lead into the third comp that I wanted to talk about today, it all leads into this. The one that I would say has the best matchups that's still like a vertical front to back style trait is actually the Battle Academia Prodigy board. So this is the build. I made it in many videos, so I'm going to gloss over it a little bit here, but you're basically playing Yuumi, 5 Battle Academia, 5 Prodigy, and you make a really strong front line to try and stall out for this Yuumi to ramp up Archangels and Gunblade, either Archangels, which is really usually good for her, or like a full crit build, or you can combine the two of them and do something like this where she has full crit and the ramping Archangels. The idea is Yuumi scales over time. As she does cast, she will add pages, which will then do more damage. So if you double ramp her up with like an Archangels, for example, she does really well and she can have really like massive amounts of one-shot potentials going on here. But with this build, 5 Prodigy is really great because it also heals an ally for damage dealt, which gives your backline a little bit of survivability. Up until you hit 5 Prodigy, you can also make a Gunblade, and the Yuumi does so much damage, especially if you have a build like this, or even if you add some crit to that build, right? Like, she has a lot of flexibility with her items. I talked about this a lot throughout many of the videos I made on Yuumi. What this type of comp is one of the more flexible options, and it recently got, like, you know, with Seraphine changes, a lot more reliable, because now Seraphine 2 with random items can actually do damage, which is nice. 5 Prodigy got a little bit of a mana nerf, but it got a buff to the healing aspect of it. So all in all, this comp is in a really great spot right now. And the thing that's good about this comp is that if the Yuumi ever targets the Akali, like with the other matchups that I'm talking about, if it ever targets Akali or it ever targets the Volibear, you pretty much can one-shot it, because she scales as the fight goes on, and you also have some sustain, like you have some extra healing that you can heal your backline with, especially if you make it to 5 Prodigy. So this comp works really well right now, because if like the Akali jumps on the Yuumi and the Yuumi kills a frontline unit and then Akali's right in front of her, she just one taps the Akali and then you can win the fight. Or vice versa, if the Volibear tries to jump on the Yuumi and the Yuumi doesn't get one shot, she can just one shot like the Volibear back. Or if the Volibear is like somewhere in the back line and she retargets, she can just retarget in one shot. But that usually means that you want to make Archangels a lot of times on the Yuumi to give you that potential, especially if you're going into those matchups. But still, flexible items, decent situation. Leona's a beast, so she'll just tank forever. Cassante's also a beast. He'll just tank forever. Usually you play 4 Prodigy until you make it to level 9, or you can play a Prodigy +1, and then that makes the comp a little bit more reliable. But anyways, those are the 3 level 8 or fast 8 style comps that I think are going to be the easiest or the most reliable in the current patch, just because, like I said, a lot of it comes down to the matchups. Basically, the Volibear line is extremely strong, extremely popular. The Akali line is also becoming extremely strong, extremely popular, because it's very good at cheesing and just randomly winning fights, because if you guess right and you kill the carry early, you can just win a fight even if you're significantly weaker than them. So because between those two, having positioning nightmares and having a real difficult time if you're playing any other comp and low rolling around them, I think the third option that I would say is the Battle Academia, because it still can compete with those very easily. So it just comes down to like what comp you have the best spot for, and I think that's going to give you a lot more success. Now, we do have to talk about reroll comps. So in terms of the reroll comps, there are a couple changes. Obviously, the big one, Gangplank, I don't think you should really play anymore. Personally, if you still want to play it, that's fine. If you think that you can rank up and it is successful with it, and you're like playing it every single game and it's still functioning correctly, that's fine. I know that I tried it out and I lost a lot of LP trying it out by accident, even because I just didn't know it was patched yet when I was playing, and I was losing for free and I didn't know why. I definitely don't think that it's a viable line, the whole Gangplank mentor reroll. I think it's dead. So that's just me. That's my recommendation, especially if you're starting out, just to be on top of things. Let's talk about what reroll lines I think are going to be a little bit better right now. Some of it also comes down to what's good into these other comps. Obviously, I'm giving this with the perspective of people in your lobby, like having the competency to play like these comps that are pretty strong right now. But I think that the reroll comps that I would suggest are ones that, similar to like the Yuumi board, have a decent time playing into these comps, where you have like the potential to still be able to like place well, even if there are lots of people playing those other 2 comps, right? First one we're going to talk about, this is going to be Jayce reroll and Caitlyn reroll. So this is really great because we're going to talk about Ornn artifacts tomorrow, but basically this comp with a Silvermere Dawn is basically the most broken thing in the face of the earth. Jayce with a Silvermere Dawn has a better average than some 3-star 4 costs in the game currently. And I'm not even stuttering, and I'm not even exaggerating and making that shit up. It's like true. It has like a better win percentage and a better top 4 chance than some 3-star 4 costs. It's that level of obnoxious and strong. But basically, long story short, I'll explain a lot in the Ornn artifact video, but I'll break it down here really nice, really bite size. Silvermere Dawn makes it so that you attack very slow, but you stun targets, which is like partially like annoying, but it's not that big of a deal. It just makes it so that melee matchups are really good for you, but other than that, it's not that big of a deal. And then it gives you a bunch of AD, armor and magic, so it makes you like a giga monster if you have an ult or some ability that scales really well off AD. Now, the big thing about Silvermere Dawn that is so obnoxious right now is that the last sentence here, well, not the last sentence, second last sentence, convert 1% of damage taken into mana. What they did this set, because they said, hey, this is going to be a problem, let's remove like that thing where like you get mana from getting hit. So Jayce is an attack fighter, right? Attack fighter. He's not an attack tank. Only tanks now generate mana from being hit. that's a really big thing, because if you don't have Silvermere Dawn, then Jayce has to generate mana from auto-attacking. He's not very fast in auto-attacking, so it's like a little bit awkward. And the whole point of that was to not make these 1v9 scenarios where a unit just chain casts and just like 1v9, just like everybody hits him, generates an ult, casts the ult, and then just like kills everything, heals, and then just like rinse repeat, and you heal and kill and heal and kill and heal and kill, and the more you try and attack him, the more mana he generates, and then the more damage he does. What did they decide to do though? They decided to instead of like they said that's not a good TFT experience, let's remove that from the game, but instead let's make it specifically tied to this one artifact, so that you're just microdosing cyanide. You don't have cyanide all the time, you just get it only when people see the Silvermere Dawn. You have like that little dose of like, oh, this is bad for me, but okay, it's only bad for me this one time apparently. Because now what happens with Silvermere Dawn is that Jayce just gets to cast for free without having to attack. The reason this works really well is that Jayce has an insane scaling on his ult, just doing an insane amount of AD damage. But then he also scales with his Battle Academia potential, which then shoots the sparks to multiple enemies. Not only that, it also reduces their armor, so it makes it easier for them to kill. If you didn't kill them the first time around, guess what? The second ult is going to do more damage, so you're going to kill them the second time around. And the problem is it's split between multiple enemies, so he does an insane amount of damage. You just gave him infinite AD from the Silvermere Dawn, and now he just kills everybody. Well, what else can you do about that? We also have Caitlyn, who targets the furthest unit in the game and has a bullet that bounces after she hits a unit. So what happens is you hit a unit, and then you have a bouncing bullet that also scales off AD. This Caitlyn, between the Caitlyn and the Jayce, they're hitting the entire fucking board every time they cast their ult, and they're killing everything. It's insane. It's absolutely nutty, and it's absolutely nuts. But anyways, this comp also, the reason it's here is not just because of Silvermere Dawn. Obviously, the Silvermere Dawn, I want to explain it because it's a huge win condition, where it's almost like hard forceable to play this comp. If you just see Silvermere Dawn, you're like, oh, I'm just Jayce, and you can just usually top 4 or even win the game for free because of how obnoxious it is as a combination. But on top of that, it's also good without the Silvermere Dawn. So a lot of times what you'll do is you'll position your units something like this. It really depends on the on your situation, but usually you split up the board half and half. The idea is that you're just trying to make a line for this Caitlyn to be able to snipe the backline carry, because Caitlyn could usually one tap backline unit. Here I put utility on her, but you can go 3 damage items. Typically you put a mana generation on her because you just want to get that ult off a couple times, and crit obviously to do a bunch of crit damage. Caitlyn will target the furthest unit, she'll have a ball that ricochets, hits a bunch of other units. Jayce will hit the unit that he's targeting, and then he'll also have the ricochets that hit based on his potential that he does extra AD to everybody. Between the two of these units, it's pretty much unkillable Jayce, kills everything, and then you have a bunch of residual damage that either kills the rest of the board or makes them easily killable by the next time you cast. Of course, if you're trying to position around this, there's lots of positioning tricks you can do. You can put your carries closer to the center so that Caitlyn has less of a time to hit them. But of course, then they can just play the Caitlyn in a different spot and find another way to get you. Of course, you could put other items on the Jayce. You could play this without the Silvermere Dawn. I would say that it's a good tier lower because now the Jayce doesn't cast as frequently, so you don't have as fast of a kill, so it makes it a little bit awkward, and you can sometimes have like a little bit of a rough time. The board is very expensive, and Jayce 2-star to me is not very stable or reliable, so sometimes you're like stuck on level 7, unable to hit the Jayce 3, and without the Silvermere Dawn, you're not just steamrolling and saving that HP advantage until you have the Jayce and the Caitlyn, and then you can maybe do well. But it still is a playable comp like this. It's just like a good tier lower than the Silvermere Dawn, very obviously speaking. Now, how strong it is without Silvermere Dawn is really up to your spot. I would not hard force this comp if I don't have Silvermere Dawn. I would play it if I started the game with Jayce Caitlyn or Jayce or Caitlyn, like if I have a good spot for the reroll comp. Without Silvermere Dawn, I've actually seen people build adaptive helm on him to try and get him to like do that ult so that he can try and snipe backline units similarly with Caitlyn. But I would say that like just general like damage dealing melee items are also fine on him. Like, you know, the Titans, the Hysterics, the Bloodthirsters kind of build could also work. Of course, if your units are positioning in a way that breaks this positioning, don't just grief your game. You can try and like do other creative things, right? There's lots of positionings like this where you kind of like bait the units a certain way. Just try and keep it in mind. You're just trying to always draw a line between Caitlyn and the backline carries, and you're trying to lure units to opposite sides to try and like make it so that your Caitlyn has a clear fire shot of the backline carry. Next reroll comp to talk about is Kaisa. So I think Kaisa is really good this patch. Now, Kaisa is a little bit awkward because a lot of times you're playing like those really strong front lines and back lines. But Kaisa basically has infinite scaling. If you have an early Kaisa and you get like a good power-up on her. Also, sorry, I didn't talk about power-ups with Battle Academia. Some of the good ones, because of the scaling that they have with the with their potential. Star Student. Is a Star Student? Yeah, Star Student is really good because you get 40% extra potential. So this actually, if you have Silvermere Dawn Jayce, I think this is one of the best ones you can hit. Other than that, you can go for General Tank and treat Jayce more like a Drain Tank. Not that he can Drain Tank without Silvermere Dawn, but you know what I mean? Just like survive and absorb a lot of damage. And then Caitlyn, I don't think you need Star Student, by the way, because the second Star Student doesn't really matter. It just gives you XP. Caitlyn, you usually want, I think, Efficient. Yeah, Efficient. She just gets her abilities cost less mana, and you just get her to cast a lot more frequently, so it works out really nicely. So I would suggest that in a lot of cases. Of course, I'll probably make a dedicated guide on this video just because there's a lot of other nuances with it. Sorry, I'll make a dedicated guide on this comp because there's a lot of other nuances, but I would like to say that. But especially with, sorry, talking back to Kaisa, 6 Juggernaut just helps you to stall out so that Kaisa can do a lot of damage. It's usually a really strong front line. This is one of the common builds. The thing about Kaisa that's great is that there's also multiple build paths you can go with her. Now, in terms of itemizations, I think full damage works out to be better on her. So here I just gave her a full crit build because obviously she's scaling AD, and then she has built-in damage amp from Supreme Cell. So she has attack speed from Duelist, damage amp from Supreme Cell, AD from her base kit. So if you give her crit, that's everything, right? That scales up her damage in a meaningful way. So here we have IE, Strikers, and Last Whisper. They're all items that use a glove. Last Whisper is mostly for utility, but also gives you some other nice stats that can help you out. But basically just make her ult crit and make her like pump out damage. Because she has a really long cast timing, however, she's not that much of an auto attacker, so like Gwinsu isn't that great. Sometimes people build Shojin on her. I think Shojin is like an opportunity cost kind of thing. You get off more ults, but your ults are going to hit for less a lot of the time, and you're also not going to do as much damage in your auto attacks in between ults. So a lot of times like AD units like this, they actually can do well with just triple damage items. If you played past sets, like last set for example, think Xayah, right? Early on in the game, everybody built like Shojin on Xayah, and then by the end of the set, nobody built Shojin on Xayah anymore because it was just better to give her like 3 damage items. I think that's what we're seeing with Kaisa right now, but I think both of these are fine. Like if you have a tier and you don't know what to do with it, Shojin isn't that bad on her. You can build either, right? This one just gets more ults off. This one just hits harder between ults and during ults. And then also obviously you could drop this and put a full-on damage item as well in place of the Last Whisper. Like you can put a Deathblade, or you can put a Giant Slayer if you're trying to tank bust, or you can put like something else, right? I just put it for utility, but this could be another damage item. With this comp though, there are a lot of different builds. So obviously this one is just Juggernaut. It's just a really reliable, pretty safe front line that also has the Udyr that gives you the Mentor and the Duelist synergy. And then a lot of times, because Aatrox has Heavyweight and Juggernaut, it also allows you to play the Darius pretty nicely. So you can just play the Darius and you just go for Kaisa 3-star, and a lot of times Mundo 3-star, because Mundo is like an unkillable Demon Lord. And Mundo, because he scales HP, you want to give him one of the items that heals percentage maximum HP. Either Declaw or Anima Visage, just because, or sorry, what do they call it now? Spirit Visage, just to make it so that while he's like scales in a fight, he continues to gain maximum health, and then you just recover that maximum health. Now there are other variations of this. I think one of the higher cap versions of this comp is around Rammus. Now you build the Kaisa the same way, but basically what we're doing is we're playing Mighty Mech, and we're basically playing Rammus frontline. Rammus got buffs. He's actually pretty reliable. Rammus basically continually gains armor and MR, so he becomes a really reliable, strong tank. And basically you have infinite scaling, really tanky frontline in the form of the Rammus that stuns and gains armor and MR. And then you have infinite scaling AD on your backline in the form of the Kaisa. So you play this, and then Mighty Mech kind of ties together really nicely with some of the synergies, and you play the Udyr for Mentor and Duelist. This comp I think is higher cap, but obviously you're playing Kaisa reroll, but you're playing around a Rammus, which is a 3 cost and a 2 cost, and then you want to roll on level 7 sometimes, or you want to roll a little bit on 6 and then on level 7. This one's a little bit more cluttered. It's a little bit more difficult to actually get that high cap around. However, you can play this, and then obviously you can level. Same with the other comp, the high cap versions of these, you always usually level for 4 Supreme Cell, because you just get so much extra damage amp, right? Like if you read the damage amp buffs, it's like 8, 18, 28. So a lot of times 3 Supreme Cell, and 4 Supreme Cell, and then it's like up to 50, right? Because like your Supreme Cells gain the damage amp, but then like the main Supreme Cell, which is gonna be your Kaisa, gets the second number, which is a lot higher. So a lot of times you just cap out around having the extra Supreme Cells. Of course, there are other variations of this. 4 Mentor, similar to how Gangplank Reroll is played. 4 Mentor, 4 Supreme Cell. This is another variation you can go for. And then you go for Kabuko 3-star. And then there's also the 6 Heavyweight version. This one is usually when you play Darius Reroll. Now, I don't think Darius Reroll is very good. However, he works really well with Silver Dawn as well, just not as good as Jayce. But you can play Darius Reroll. A lot of times when you play this variation, where you're playing Darius 3-star Kaisa 3-star, a lot of times for the Darius, what you really want is called Fusion Dance. Fusion Dance, fuse with the nearest ally, gaining 45% of their health, attack damage, and ability power. So you take Fusion Dance and you fuse with a Jayce 3-star, and then your Darius becomes a monster. Especially if you have Silver Dawn, the unit's fucking unkillable, kills everything. It's an absolute shit show, gong show fiesta. But of course, you need to have the artifact and you need to have the power up. It's not something that's gonna be easy to do. Of course, if you play this without the power up, or sorry, without the artifact, you still want to get Fusion Dance almost always in this style of comp. Personally, I would not play this one. I'm just showing you all the variations of Kaisa. So a lot of times it comes down to what you hit and what you can really do around. This one I think is the most safe and reliable one, because Mundo 3-star is really reliable, and you just kind of just play like a level 6 reroll. But of course, if you have the potential for these other scaling style comps, you can also play them, just given certain circumstances. There's a little bit of flexibility there. Lastly, last reroll comp and last comp of the video today, we're going to go with all reliable Katarina reroll. So Katarina reroll, really good matchups into a lot of the melee style comps because you're a melee carry yourself. With Katarina, you have built-in Executioner. So you just want to give her a Hodge, you want to give her strikers, so that you basically drive up that crit chance, make sure she's always ulting, and then Edge of Night just for survivability. You can do the same positioning with Katarina as you do with Jayce Caitlyn, because you want to make it easier for this Katarina to make it to the back line. So splitting up their front line could sometimes help, but typically what I would say with Katarina is that you don't have to worry too much about that positioning, because it doesn't matter that much. Sometimes it can grief you. You really just want to clump the Katarina on the same side as the enemy carry so she can eventually jump to the back line. She only has a 2 hex range, so it's sometimes awkward for her to get to the back line carry without a couple of jumps in between. But either way, whatever positioning you have, just try and get it so that she's like somewhere within the vicinity of the backline carry in order to get to that jumping point. If you're playing against Katarina, however, what you can do is you can kind of trap the Katarina in a little playpen, or that's what I like to call it. So let me just show you what I mean. Let's say we have a bunch of units like this, a bunch of frontline units, and then we have a bunch of backline units. Let's just, let me pick like Lucian, sure. So they're Mighty Mechs, right? Right, no matter what positioning they do, if you're playing against Katarina and you're struggling, something you can do with Katarina is you can just make her a little playpen where she can't really get to your carry. So what I like to do is something like this, right? I'll put like, you know, not exactly like this, but this is like an idea, right? So let's say like, you know, they try and do like the half and half positioning or some shit like this, right? Whatever it is, you know what I mean? What happens is the Katarina walks up here. This unit is more than 2 hexes away from this unit no matter what, even if this unit's here and she jumps here. I guess that's like almost 2 hexes, but like this is what I mean, right? She only attacks within 2 hexes, so then she's just stuck in the playpen, right? She can only jump between these units because she only has a 2 hex range. She doesn't have a 4 hex range. She can never cross the gap, right? She can never cross the sea. Maybe if she's here, she can sometimes kill and like walk up if you don't have a unit and then get there, but like you can just make a playpen for her. That's what I usually like to do. You can also position in such a way like this, because when she spins around, she has a 1 hex radius on her spin. So if you like position your units with like social distancing like this, that used to be an augment. I'm not just making like a COVID joke, but like if you position your units like 1 hexes away, then when she like spins around, she doesn't do as much damage. I wouldn't position like this if you're trying to counter. I just like making her the playpen, and then she's stuck over here. trying to figure out what to do with her life, right? Now, obviously, you know, it all comes down to like it's give and take. You have to try and creatively position to like counter what your opponent is doing, but these are just some tips that I can tell you, because like I know some of these comps are a little bit frustrating. I get frustrated too. You should see me on stream. I'm like swearing, I'm inventing new swear words every single day, but either way, it's all good. A lot of times when you go for this, you also go for Rakan 3-star. He's just a really reliable tank as well. But if you don't have Rakan 3, Leona 2 is a good stabilization point. And then leftover items you can often put on Yuumi. If your Katarina aren't perfect right away, you can actually fix them up with the Yuumi. A lot of times when I'm playing this comp, I'll make stuff like Rabadons or even Archangels earlier in the game, because really all I need to do is I need to have like Hodge, Strikers. Like these are all items that are usually like leftover components anyways, right? Like gloves and 1 tier. You don't really need to build AP. She gets some extra AP from her 7 battle academia, like how she scales a little bit more that way. But in terms of like general stats, she also does well with some of these items, because base stats can scale her up really well, but a lot of times you just rely on augments or power-ups to do that. In terms of power-ups, Dark Amulet is really good. Even though like you take max damage on cast, you get a lot of Omnivan, a lot of healing, which gives her survivability, and you gain stacking ability power, which scales with her crit because she's an executioner. She has built-in crit, so it works really well. The other one that's absolutely broken, now this applies to all the rerolls, by the way, over 9,000. So over 9,000, if you can hit this on any reroll comp, a lot of times it puts you in a lot better of a spot. It is a little bit tailored, so obviously you will get stuff, like it won't be perfect, but you'll often get stuff that works with your unit, right? If you have an AP carry, you'll get AP a lot more, or attack speed a lot more than AD. You'll still get a mixture of other stuff, and you can low roll on it. Over 9,000 is insane on a lot of units because of the mana gen as well. Mana +1 is insane. If you roll this, it's an extreme high roll, and it's part of what makes over 9,000 really strong in the future. If they nerf this, that it doesn't give mana anymore, then this would be a lot worse. But on Katarina especially, if you roll mana gen, oh boy, are you in a good spot. That is like giga juicer. But then also you can use over 9,000 on a lot of the other units if you're trying to scale with them. So you get this on stage 2. You can basically test it out, right? If you see like one copy of Katarina and you're like, should I play Katarina? You can throw the bonus fruit on her and see if you hit over 9,000. And if you see over 9,000, you're like, okay, I guess I'll just play Katarina. Easy game now, right? Like that's how I usually run it. And if I don't have over 9,000, I'm like, okay, we'll see. If I find more Katarinas, we'll kind of decide later. But that's like a really good enabler, as we talk about enablers as of yesterday's video. But anyways, thanks for watching. Sorry it was a little bit longer. A lot of the comps I had to talk about today, I felt like I had to do a little bit more nuanced explanation in terms of why they're good and how to kind of optimize them a little bit. Hopefully it was informative and fun. And hopefully, like, if you already know about the comps, obviously, like, you know, like B patch has been out for a little bit, so like, you know, a lot of these developments happened over the weekend, right? Like the Akali comp was like really popular on Saturday, and by now, like, I think everybody's kind of playing it. You know, but still, I wanted to keep everybody up to date, and hopefully this was a helpful video. I'll try to continue to do on patch day best comps, and then when there's the B patch or C patch in this case, then I'll do the other updates as well. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and see ya. Bye-bye. Last thing, I'll just do the giveaway right now, so you guys can see how to enter. We reached our sub goal for an RP giveaway, so if you want to enter, please make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Then you're going to have to join the Discord that is linked on each of the descriptions in each of my videos, as you see here. This will bring you to the Wolfgang Discord, which is what I use for go live notifications, as well as any other discussions if you want to be a part of the community. But if not, basically if you scroll down under TFT, there's a TFT giveaway channel, and as you can see, there's going to be this best turtle bot that says the TFT RP giveaway that I just put up today. You have to just click this button that says enter giveaway. If you're having trouble finding it, it's actually pinned from the top, in the top right corner, the pinned message. You can go to it and then click the enter giveaway button. This is going to be for 1,380 RP, or around $15. And just to let you guys know, if you're not on NA servers, I sometimes have difficulty transferring the funds over. So instead, it will be an Amazon gift card, or I can give you a coupon for merch store or a custom art piece, whatever you desire. But thank you for supporting me, and to many more giveaways in the future.